Biomechanics and yoga. That's what we're going to cover today. So we'll start off with a poll. What do you think it means to be good at yoga? You can say anything. I just want to know what you're thinking. All right. Thank you for your participation. Yes, these are all excellent answers. So I'm hoping that just like we mapped our intuitions last time to something more concrete, hopefully we can relate all of these intuitions that we have to something more concrete. And I'd like to start by asking a question, and that question is mainly based on this. So in the description, I had said that yoga can be used to achieve balance across multiple muscle systems to improve movement coordination. I talked about this last time without explicitly mentioning it, but I want to deal with the idea of muscle systems. Now, in the human body, there are over 650 muscles, and it might get fairly challenging to think about each one of these in isolation. So I have a couple more quick polls. How do we understand something so complicated? All right. Split into groups, use simplifying models. Okay, you're really on board with this. Understanding the single unit first, excellent. So that is the reductionist approach, and it is extremely valuable. In this course, however, we are going to try to think about groups. Not this. Just to be clear, I am not against looking at single units first, but even after we learn about the single units, we also want to think about how do we try to think about the whole as well. So one strategy is to think about groups of muscles rather than individual muscles, right? Like some of you said. And what do you think some good are some good ways of grouping muscles? I love the participation. Size, bigger muscles go together. Tension, compression pairings. Agonist, antagonist, excellent. Flexors and extensors, similar idea. Assigning it to parts of the body, like look at all the muscles around a joint, excellent idea. Yes, using muscle activity. Now this is getting into behavior, right? Movement type, length, length, segment. These are all correct answers. But what I want you to realize is that some of these groupings offer advantage when we think about specific things, when we approach movement from specific aspects. One particularly advantageous grouping of muscles that in the context of elastic energy that we have been discussing is this, we use this toy, right? So let's review it. So here, when we exert forces, the total length of these passive elements is going to change, right? Increase. So the question I'm going to ask is, what is the equivalent of an elastic band? So if I pop off one of these caps, you can see that, hopefully you can see, this band is one continuous thing, even though once I attach it to the bone, so to speak, I think of it as two separate segments. So interestingly, in the body. So this is one parallel between tensegrity systems in the body. This is the classic way of how we think about muscle to bone attachments, right? So muscles attach to bones via tendons. But anatomists carefully dissected cadavers, and what they have found is that it's basically correct, but there's more to the idea. There are some connective tissue fibers that run parallel, meaning from one muscle straight to the next without actually laying down and attaching to the bone. So when they dissect out these muscles and keep following them, they see that most often muscle systems go from toe to head. And they have, this is a book, Anatomy Trains. They have outlined these ideas very carefully in this book. And there are really nice pictures. I mostly look at the pictures. So this is another perhaps less common way of thinking about groups of muscles. And we'll continue our exploration, but let's just recall that we have explored these muscle systems in the context of energy cycle. Last time we said that if we have momentum, if we are able to store them as elastic energy in our tissues and then retrieve it in the way we want, we can create efficient movement. And we explored that in the context of running. So I was running on a treadmill, and I changed the speed. And the main picture I want you to recall from last time is the following. The red line shows the up-down position of the big toe. So roughly one cycle corresponds to 2 steps. And then the muscle system length is oscillating every time I walk, right? So if I increase the speed, the mean length of the muscle system is increasing. And I gave this analogy of a guitar string. If you want to produce a higher note, tune the guitar string higher, meaning increase the tension. In this case, you can do it by increasing the length. Okay, so now I'd like you to think about how does this idea of energy cycle relate to yoga? The answer may not be obvious. We're going to explore it today, but I just want to hear what you think. All right. Oh, I love these. Oh, yes, let's test these intuitions by the end of it, right? So one idea is yoga flow is the flow of energy. And for many years, I didn't know what energy they were talking about. Thinking about it in terms of elastic energy in tissues makes it much, much easier, relatable, and controllable. Lower frequency energy cycles. This is interesting. We'll talk about that. Helps control it, reduces the amplitude. Okay, I love this. So keep this in mind. Now, there are two ways to test intuitions. One, you can use all of these tools that we are talking about to test your intuitions. Or two, you can get a better feel for it by paying attention to what's happening in your body. So to facilitate this, to help you think in this way where you try to explore within yourself, we are going to lead a half an hour yoga session. This session will be led by Pallavi Bharadwaj. She is a fellow postdoc at MIT Lids department, and she works in renewable energy systems research and believes in sustainability in inner and outer worlds. Now, I am going to give it away to Pallavi. This part of this part of today's session will not be recorded. I think it would help Pallavi if she can see you. Pallavi, I certainly feel refreshed after the session. Thank you so much for leading it, and I hope we're going to talk more about it. So I can send you a recording. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. I hope all of you are ready to give me some more input on the questions I asked before. I hope everybody had a wonderful yoga session. Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, excellent. Okay, so relationship between gait and yoga. So this is the picture I keep coming back to. In the context of gait, remember that when I switched from walking to jogging to running, my muscle system just became longer, right? I had no control over it. I just increased the speed. Another thing that happened was the oscillation amplitude also got larger. Now, if we recall, the so let's just follow a muscle system uh, using the same tools that we saw before. Let me reshare my screen to optimize for video. Okay, so these are some of the poses that we have seen. On the bottom, you're going to see the length of the entire muscle system as I go through this flow. So all I want you to notice is that we are changing the length by quite a lot, right? So 85 centimeters to 95 centimeters, it's more than 10%. So here are some examples of the variation we can get in our muscle system through the different poses that you saw today. So in the context of walking and running, the way we are changing muscle system length is just by changing the speed, right? Now we are using poses as a way to explore the action of a muscle system at a specific length. So during yoga, there is an idea of deliberation. When I ran, I just increased the speed on my treadmill and I just kept running. And I didn't really think about my muscles or the length of my muscles, where I put my hands and so on. And in yoga, we manipulate this, right? So here is the length of a muscle system during a 10-minute session. You can see that there is quite a lot of variation. What I would like to bring to your attention is one more thing here. So there are these oscillations that happen when I stay in a specific pose. One of the things that you learned in today's session, Pallavi kept talking about it, is the importance of breath. So there are many ways in which we use breath in yoga. Two important ways are we keep breathing in a specific pose, or we initiate a pose by initiating the breath first. So there is some notion of causality and there is some notion of stability. So what I want to explore today with you a little bit is this idea of what happens when we stay in a pose and breathe. You can see that the mean length of the system is different in different poses, and then we are oscillating around that. So here's an example. So I'm going to use my breath to change the pose, and then I'm going to stay there for a little bit. It is quite small, but it's there. And moving causes bigger changes. So see if you can notice my belly in this other view and see which phase of breathing corresponds to which phase of the length. So uh, to make it easier for you, let me just flip between these two images. So here I'm showing you the peak of an inhale. I know this because I watched the video very closely and I marked the position of my belly. And then here is the trough. So my muscle line, even though it's in my back, not my stomach, remember, this is important. Because usually when we think of inhaling, we think of belly coming forward, and many times we crunch the back. So the exact opposite is happening, is what I'm trying to say. So the peak of the maximum length during the oscillation corresponds to the transition from end of the inhale, and the end of the exhale is the trough. So let's look at the same thing in a couple more poses. As you can tell, I'm not super experienced in terms of yoga, but what would it mean to be more experienced, right? It just means I would have a much more clear oscillation. I found somebody on YouTube who's really good, and I'll show you. You don't even need these instruments to tell what's happening. This is one of the, pay attention to my belly in this video. You can clearly see the inhale and exhale. All right. Uh, One more pose that we explored today. It's just 1 centimeter, the y-axis, so you can't really tell. So now in this video, it's more obvious because you can see my belly. So perhaps this is the reason they say in yoga, never hold your breath. So you're always breathing in every pose, even though you stay there for a long time. So the idea is, in running, we saw at different lengths, we are putting in and taking out different amounts of elastic energy. And in yoga, we are also doing the same thing, but we are more deliberate about it. So this is an example. So she does a couple of poses and she breathes, she takes a few breaths in the down dog position. And it is very, very, very clear what is happening in her body.
Pancha inhale, Shat exhale. 1, 2,
That's a breath.
3, 4, and 5. Sapta inhale, head up, Ashta.
So I hope you could see the back lengthening as the belly was, as she was inhaling, and the back shortening as the belly was exhaling. So the idea is we are manipulating the total amount of elastic energy in our body using our breath. We'll go into more detail in terms of breathing. So for now, let's just compare gait and yoga. Right? In the context of gait, the length of the muscle system is set according to speed, and the constant conversion between kinetic and elastic energy causes the oscillation. So every touchdown, right? So during yoga, poses are used to explore muscle systems at different lengths, and breathing is used to oscillate the muscle system around a specific length. So there is some idea of taking deliberate conscious control over automatic processes that are happening in our body while we do something, while we go about moving around during our day. Okay, so now I don't know if anything changed. I just want to hear from you again. What does it mean to be good at yoga? I agree with everything you said before. If there's anything else you want to add, I'd love to hear. Okay, let's see. Clear connection between breath and control of elastic energy. Perfect. So the other aspect to that is, how do we read changes in muscle lengths and guide them into specific places to create the movements that we want? That is a more complicated topic. I don't have a compelling demonstration at this point, but next time I run this course, hopefully I'll have one. Yes, notice changes in your body. Yes, breathing, we mostly think about it as supplying oxygen to our body, but there's a lot happening, right? So mechanically, there is the diaphragm contracts, and that is basically changing chemical energy, which is basically your calories, into elastic energy temporarily, however few calories those are. And then during the exhale, most often what we do is we just let go. In that case, it is just dissipation. But next time we will take a deeper look at breathing, where when you let go, things start moving again, and there are exercises designed to help you catch that kinetic energy and repurpose some of it. So all of these concepts tie back into how much energy can we conserve and how efficiently can we move. I understand this is a bit against the idea of burning as many calories as possible to be as healthy as possible, but there is a sense of burning just as much as many as we need. And at least in my personal experience, this is a lot of fun. So focused, flexible control of breath, intentional movements, conscious movement of breaths. Yes, keep breathing at all times. I agree with all of these. Thank you for participating. So we'll take a deeper look at breathing in the next session, and we'll also relate it to the nervous system a little bit. So thank you for participating. And before I end the session, I want to play a little game. It's called Guess the Asana. So all I'm showing you is a few points from motion capture. And I want to know if you can guess which asana this is. This is great. Okay, let's see what it is. There's tree pose. One more, just to amuse me. Which asana is this? So when I started doing some of this stuff, I realized it is not obvious. All right. So that was Peaceful Warrior.